since then, what we've tried to really do is bring that to as many people as possible. And what we found is there are people who are looking for that kind of information, probably people that listen to your podcast, people that are in your community. But what we found is that the people who aren't actively looking for it, the people who don't get exposure or access to this type of information, those are the ones who need it the most. And over the last several years, we've been going into prisons and schools and inner cities and rehab centers and all these places where people are really down on their luck and people are have no hope and they don't have a dream. And really help them to find their vision, to figure out how they're going to fund it, to find the people who can connect them, and then to be able to take care of themselves, mentally, physically, and emotionally in a way that they can sustain it. And so over the last several years, we've been putting together programs to go into schools, go into prisons, go into communities, organizations, businesses, to bring this, what is very familiar to a lot of people in the personal development space, but is not so familiar outside of it. And so that's to kind of catch you up, Nick. I'd love to just throw it out to you, right now, because what we found is since COVID, everyone in our community has been hit. We have people who are starting at the bottom and they are looking to scratch and claw their way out of poverty, and obviously they are being affected by it. But we have some billionaires in the community, and we have some people who are pushing, who were financially free and are financially free, and in some ways they're still dealing with COVID and they're still dealing with some of the fallout. So I'd love to just kind of let you share, what you've been seeing, what you've been dealing with, whether it's you or your community, and kind of what you've been experiencing in the side hustle world since since the world has kind of been turned upside down.
Since the world has been turned upside down, it's a good way to put it. It's weird in some ways because humans are very adaptable. And we were talking about this last night, my wife and I. It's like, well, we haven't seen any of our really close friends in any meaningful way in 6 months now. And it sucks, but at the same time, we've adapted to it. But to your point about the job loss and the impact on people's livelihoods, there's no beating around the bush there. And that's been devastating to a lot of people. And of course, the lower quartiles of the income brackets are the hardest hit. And depending on what industry you were in, maybe you were the hardest hit, because we had people who had built side hustles around travel and tourism and events, and they're just wiped off the map. And you're through no fault of their own, you couldn't have necessarily seen this coming. And so it's just it's brutal. So it's been people trying to diversify income streams, people trying to figure out, okay, what service or product can I offer that's going to be relevant today, that's safe to deliver today, and maybe what message is going to be relevant and pertinent that I can spread if I'm starting more of a kind of a longer term, content driven type of operation.
Yeah. One of the first conversations we had after COVID was with one of our our main supporters, Jeff Hoffman. He's the co-founder of Priceline. He talked about his big thing that he was preaching was retool, redeploy. And there's one other one that is redesign, that is basically taking your skills that you currently have and then reassessing in the current market, in the current conditions, and finding out where those new opportunities are. Nick, to kind of take you into a little bit more of what we do, one of our core teaching is what we call the fulfillment triangle. And I'm sure it's right up your alley without even knowing, kind of too much of your story. But what we found is that a lot of people, they chase success. I've had my own journey with that. They chase success, they make all this money, they have all the accomplishments, the achievements, all the things, the flashy stuff. And then they realize that that's not actually what they wanted. They turn around, they're looking for something more. And what we found is actually a better goal or better something to shoot for is fulfillment, because that is what we find is what people actually look for. Once they've achieved success, they actually look for fulfillment. And we find that it's at the center of three things. You find fulfillment at the center of your passions, the things when you're doing something that you love, at the center of your talents, when you're doing something that you're good at, and then where there's opportunity in the market, where someone will pay you for it, or there's some way that you can leverage those passions and those talents as a career. And so I'd love to hear how you either stumbled into that. We've had some guests on our show who either intuitively just kind of knew that was their navigation system. We've had some people who had a lot of trial and error, and they bashed their head against the wall over here doing this thing, and then they realized that this way was actually a better path. How did you stumble onto what you're doing, and kind of what was that journey getting to where you're now leading people start their own side hustles and create their own sources, additional sources of income?
Sure. It was the result of some soul searching on my own part. I'm like, what do you want to be known for when somebody Googles you? And you kind of ask yourself the same questions that everybody recommends. Like, what do you never get tired of talking about? What really lights you up? And for me, it was this lower risk brand of entrepreneurship, because the narrative that, I'd kind of grown up with and that I was hearing come out of Silicon Valley and stuff was like, oh, an entrepreneur is somebody who jumps off the cliff and then figures out how to build their parachute on the way down. It's like, that sounds terrifying. Like, don't do that. There's a different way. There's a better way. Maybe not better, but there's an alternative. And that was the path that I took with my original side hustle, which was an online business in the footwear space. It don't really matter because it is long dead at this point, but that was the vehicle that let me quit my job. And, so I ran that for years and years and years before starting Side Hustle Nation on the side from that, to kind of share my own stories and, marketing tips and tactics and all this crazy stuff. But what really started to take off was, no, it's not about me being the expert. It's about pointing the mic at somebody else and hearing their story. Like, hey, you started something that I never even heard of. I never even thought of. How did you do that? And now I've done that for more than 400 episodes on the Side Hustle Show. And that took on a life of its own far faster than the blog or my attempted blogging did.
Yeah. For me, I found I came up in the sales world and right all through college and right out of college was a sales manager, and it was very close to a 9-to-5, a very corporate that they sold to you as being your own business owner. And I luckily read 50 books, and I think it was in 2016, and started to see all of these different opportunities that were out there. I read Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Grant Cardone, all the people that were coming up at the time. And I started to see all these different opportunities, the internet being one of them as a source of income. What made you open your eyes, or can you take us into the story of it, like how you started that shoe thing? A lot of our people, and to kind of give you some context on our community, they're either in one of two places. A lot of them have either just kind of getting out into the world. We have a lot of people who are just out of school, whether it's high school or college, and they're looking for their first or second job. They haven't really built a career yet, but they're looking to get started. And then we do have quite a few people who are very established in their careers, 30, 40, make something 40 years in a job, and now they're in the same exact position as that young person, looking for something else. And we find a lot of them are hesitant. They're nervous. They're scared. They don't want to make the leap, or they're unsure, or they have all of these shiny objects and they don't know which one to chase. So for you, can you kind of take us into like what life was like when you were starting, your first shoe thing, and kind of how you stumbled or, evolved through that?
Yeah, I mean, life looked very different. This was 16 years ago. I was in the basement of my college house with like 5 other roommates and trying to bang out like Google ads for specific models of shoes. It was a new frontier, and it was young. It was exciting, and I remember making my first like $300 a month or something. I was like, this is awesome. Like, this almost pays for my rent for the month. But what it was because at that time, and maybe even still today, like you could test out your idea really affordably. And so I started with a budget of $1 a day on Google. Like, will people click on this stuff? Will they buy stuff? Is there going to be a profitable spread in between the two in terms of affiliate revenue in my case? And that's what it was. Like, before I felt comfortable investing in having a website built, it was like in Good to Great, Jim Collins talks about firing bullets before firing cannonballs. And it's like these little, text link ads for $1 a day. Those were the bullets. Like, they kind of let you calibrate, low risk. And then, okay, once you find something that hits its target, you're like, okay, now I'm going all in and having this website built. Whereas I hear from people who have kind of gone about it the opposite way. They'll send me a note. I'm 9 months into this project, 30 grand in development. My website's almost finished. And it's like, do you have a customer? Like, you kind of want to ask some of these like leading questions like, what kind of validation have you done? But I really like this triangle of, like you mentioned, the passion, talents, and opportunity. Dan Pink kind of rephrased it as autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Like, do I have control over what I'm working on? Like, do I feel like I'm in charge of my own destiny? Am I maybe not necessarily, I don't know, talented and mastery kind of like go hand in hand, where it's like, at least if I'm not good starting out, like at least I can see my progress, like I'm getting better. And the podcast is an example of that. Like, had no talent for podcasting, but over the course of years of practice, like I feel like I've gotten a little bit better at it. And so it's like this pursuit of mastery is something that checks that box. And then his final one was like a sense of purpose. And it's like, am I doing work that matters? And that was kind of the missing piece in the shoe business for me, where it's like, I'm helping people save money on their shoes. Like, I guess that's a somewhat noble cause, but it wasn't like, an undying, like, yes, I'm changing the world kind of a thing, where the side project, what turned into Side Hustle Nation, definitely checked that box a little bit more.
Yeah. And I want to commend you. I think that helping people save money on shoes is a worthy, purpose in the moment. And then you found a greater purpose. And I think that, at least in my moments, I've had to give meaning to certain events or to experiences. One of our another people that's been a big part of our community, his name is John Burgos. He's talked about meaning making and finding a purpose for our job or a task that you have to do. Right? There's the story of the old bricklayers, and they're all doing the same thing for different reasons. The next kind of core philosophy that we talk about at One Life is what we call our core four. And what we found is that, lots of people have success in lots of areas of their life, but if you have a ton of money, but then your health is bankrupt, is that really success? Or, your business is wildly successful, but your marriage and your family is falling apart. And there's all these examples of people who have success in one area of their life, but they neglect the others that what we found are important, not only to be successful, but just for that fulfillment's sake. And it's vision, having a clear vision of your future, your finances, knowing how you're going to fund it, how you're going to pay for it, that future, your relationships, who's in your inner circle, whether it's your posse, your mentors, obviously, marital or familial relationships. And the last one is wellness. And people can kind of argue which ones are more important than the others, but wellness, we include there is spiritual health, mental health, and emotional health. Physical, I guess, is in there, obviously as well. I would imagine that it makes most sense that finances is where you would live and kind of the core pillar that you would, identify with. But I'd love, just hearing those. Do any of those resonate with any of the other ones resonate with your journey and resonate with why you decided to start Side Hustle Nation, or some of the other people that you've now worked with, the 400 episodes of the people in your community that you've helped? Like, do you see it being about more than just money for people who are starting and building their side hustles?
Money is maybe the most immediate driving factor. Is like, there's never enough. There's never enough to go around, or making extra money never really goes out of style. But once people dive into it, it's like, well, why do you need that extra money? Like, what does that really afford you? And then you get into kind of some of the deeper motivations of like, well, I want to be in control over my own calendar. I want to, be able to pay off this debt. Well, what does that afford you? Well, I want to be able to travel with my family. I want to be able to do all this other stuff. And so money it's just a tool. Like, it's not it's a means to an end. It's not the end itself. So that's definitely something that has honestly taken me. And that's like something that someone with money says. Like, if you're broke, it's like, well, it's of course, F it, I just need that cash. So I totally get that. And I've been in different stages of my life, been that person who has somewhat neglected the health and maybe even interpersonal relationships in pursuit of that business, where it's like, I it's kind of this heads down sprint phase of like, I just need to put in my 12, 13, 14-hour days, knock this out, and then I can come up for air. And as long as there is, a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, where you can come up for air, fine. But if you have built yourself a job or a routine where that is never ending, like it's such a bad recipe for burnout, where it's like, is this even worth it? It becomes a huge challenge.
Yeah, I remember seeing, I got into the internet marketing world much later after you had. It feels like forever, but when you say 16 years, I'm like, wow, I've only been in it about 5 years. And I remember a lot of people, when I started, there was this idea of being like a digital nomad and being able to travel the world and work from home and work from, your laptop on the beach and by the pool. And me, I just wanted to stay home. I just wanted to work from my office. I didn't want to deal with traffic. I wanted to be able to spend more time with my fiance, who's now my wife. And, we were thinking about starting a family. And for you, what was the driving factor for you? And then are there any other reasons that either you find coming up that are kind of themes of why people start side hustles, or maybe there are some significant stories that stand out to you about people and the reasons that they started their side hustle?
Sure. So first up, like a reason for me, and this will sound like sad, I don't know, if for me one of the biggest like motivating factors was like having to ask my boss to take vacation. And I think the first year I got like 1 week of vacation at this job. And it was like, so it wasn't even like, can I take vacation? Can I take this week off? It was like, can I take this Friday off? And it just felt, I don't know, it was depressing. It was kind of humiliating in a way to like have to ask somebody else, like, what you going to do? How are you going to spend your time? I don't know, for whatever reason, like it totally rubbed me the wrong way. And so that was a motivating factor. The other motivating factor was just like, I was a decent student in school. I did what they were supposed to do. I got good grades. I got a decent job, but like, I don't want to work here for the rest of my life. Like this is just not, I felt like this tremendous pressure to like find a way out. There's got to be a different path. You're a smart guy. You can figure this out. And so that was very motivating too. And had it not been shoes, years later, maybe it would have been something else, because it was just like, that was always in the back of my mind. Like, I'm going to be doing my own thing. I just don't necessarily know what it's going to be. For other folks that I talk to, you hear kind of similar stories where it's like, I just wanted to spend more time with my kids. I wanted to spend more time with my family. I hated my job. Like, that's a portion of the population. Like, I just needed to get out of this cubicle. So that's the kind of stuff that tends to come up. Or like, I wanted to work on something that I cared about. And so that is another factor that tends to come up in conversations with side hustlers who kind of have made the leap.
Yeah, I think that there's the moment of maybe a couple of moments. The first is like an awakening, right? To realize that there's even opportunities out there, right? Because when I graduated high school in 2009, which is kind of like right before the internet really took over, and the advice was similar to you: go to school, get a good job, work the job, and like that was the route, that was the path. And there was, becoming a YouTuber was not a thing, right? Podcasts were just barely, what is a podcast? It sounds like a dish or and so there's that awakening, seeing what's out there. And then there's kind of this the second moment of dissatisfaction, right? You kind of almost have to be upset, right? For you, it was when you had to ask for a day off. For me, it was when I was driving home, and I only lived 7 miles from my house, but it took me 2.5 hours in LA traffic to go 7 miles on a Thursday
I literally
night,
could have walked it faster. Yeah.
No reason, no accidents, just a Thursday night, right? And so I got home and I told my fiance, my wife now, I thought, like, I'm done. I'm like, I don't know what it is. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm not going to continue to do this. And I think that, in my journey, similar to the shoe thing, it was, you just kind of start throwing stuff at the wall, and you just got to try stuff. And I started selling courses and mastermind, all these different things. And I've gone through kind of 6 or 7 iterations of my business to what I'm doing now to make money. And so now as we move into that next step, right, people have that awakening. They see other opportunities. They don't know what it is. They don't know what they want to do, but they're dissatisfied. Because there are so many opportunities, there are so many things to do, how does one start or decide which route to take? Do you have any advice for someone who's like looking at all the routes and just unsure about where to go?
Oh man, don't pay attention to Side Hustle Nation, because this is the shiny object world headquarters over here. So um, the challenge is, especially in my case with entrepreneurial ADD, like that sounds cool, I want to try that. It's simplify first, diversify second. So it's trying to find that one thing that you can stick with long enough to get some feedback, positive or negative. If it's negative, okay, try the next thing. If it's positive, okay, keep going. And that is the biggest challenge. So if you have this laundry list of things that you could do, it's this matter, and I have a kind of like a weighted decision making matrix that I would tend to use, where you have got maybe 5 or 10 questions on like stuff that you care about down the side, like how interested or excited am I about this project? How quickly do you think I could see results with this? How does it scale? Is it sellable? Like, what's the exit strategy, right? And you kind of give each one, call it like a baseball score, like single, double, triple, home run. Like, maybe it's a 4 as a home run if this is like a super scalable business and I can get customers right away and I'm really excited about it. Okay. And so that gives you a quantifiable way. Like if I'm trying to decide between 4 or 5 different opportunities to chase, okay, here's the one that I ought to pursue first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I love the idea of bringing some sort of system to this decision-making process, because it can be overwhelming. And so finding a way to kind of break it down into, the different pieces, I think makes a ton of sense. Do you have any favorites, right? When I was in the kind of online coaching space for the very short time that I realized that, people are essentially selling 3 things. You're either selling a digital product, a physical product, or you're selling a service. Do you have any kind of broad categories or favorites or, starters? Or, I mean, I think about like, there was always just tell a kid to go mow a lawn, and any kid can mow a lawn. Anybody could get started with that. They may not, have a landscaping, business as, when they're older, but anybody could get started mowing a lawn. Are there things like that you've seen where you could say, hey, just, I know you don't know what to do, but try this. It may work, it may not, but try it. You can do this, or try, something like this where maybe it's low barrier to entry, low cost, that someone can get started with.
Of course. So you said physical products, digital products, and services. So I'll take it one more. So there's the product side, the service side, and then there's the kind of the audience size business, audience-based business, which is kind of the realm that I tend to play in, where monetize with ads, monetize with affiliate revenue, monetize with YouTube, pre-roll ads, whatever it is going on over there. So those kind of the three business models that I tend to think of. But as far as starting and seeing results quickly, product or service are your ways to go. On the product side, it's usually like product flipping, like buy low, sell high, right? It's like one of the oldest business models in the world. We hear stories of people like, oh, I went to this garage sale, I found this deal on Craigslist or OfferUp or wherever it is, Facebook Marketplace, and by taking that offer that was available locally, and he'd even just do like this on consignment in your neighborhood, like, hey, it's spring cleaning time, guys, I'll help you sell this stuff, I'll take a fee, and then you can keep the rest. That is one of the fastest ways to get started, because you can start with whatever limited capital that you have, and it multiplies money fairly quickly. Whereas like, we hear stories, and I just recorded with a woman this week who, that was her business. Like she quit her nursing job to be a full-time flipper, basically. She's like, I found a great niche in sleep number beds, commercial cooktops, like sometimes like some pretty big bulky stuff. She's like, once you figure out freight shipping, you go pick up free pallets at the grocery store. You figured, it's like, I'm like impressed with this, but she talked about finding stuff for $200-300 and then selling it on eBay for 3,000, right? So if you buy well, it's just like, okay, I can multiply this money so much faster than sticking it in an index fund and, getting your 8% a year for 40 years. It's like, no, I need to, multiply what little nest egg I have and do it quickly. So product flipping is definitely one of these early starter type of business categories. The second one is on the service side. This is freelancing, consulting, coaching. generally hours for dollars, but it could be online, it could be offline. Like I just recorded with a woman who has a pet waste removal business. Like, hey, I'll come to your backyard, I'll scoop up the dog's poop, and it just is word of mouth. Like it's kind of this affordable luxury for homeowners. Hey, I got a pooper scooper. You got a pooper scooper, and the word spreads there. And so she was doing, when we first recorded, I think she was about a year into her business. She had 80 recurring customers and like $15 a week or something. It's like $1,000 a week business for something that's not the most glamorous work in the world, but like you said, like mowing lawns, like something anybody can do. So I was inspired by that one and some of these, call it blue collar services, just because there is a diminishing number of people going into the trades. And at the same time, more and more homeowners just saying like, I don't want to do this stuff. Like, hey, I have limited hours. This is not how I want to be spending my time. Somebody else gave me the stat that, like, to go back to the lawn mowing thing, like 20 years ago, maybe one homeowner in 20 outsourced their lawn mowing, yard care stuff. And today it's like 40%. Like, I just don't have time for it. I don't want to deal with it. And it's just like, instead of conquesting market share from somebody else, no, the pie just keeps getting bigger.
Yeah, it's a really fantastic time that we live in that regard, right? That there are so many opportunities, and I think that speaks to the fulfillment triangle, and kind of, that's the foundation, is the opportunity. And what we found is that, a lot of people, there's the idea of the starving artist, right? They don't have to be starving anymore. They're not able to eat caviar right away, but there are ways to be able to do what you love and still make money from it. And it may not always start that way, right? You might have to pick up some poop at the beginning to get you going, but I think that's a really cool story, that someone sees an opportunity. People don't want to go out and pick up the dog's poop, and they go out and do it. They have the skills and the talents to be able to do it, and they're passionate enough, and find a way to do it. So let's we're coming up. We're about 2/3 of the way through the conversation here. I'd love to know, are there any, we've talked a lot about kind of the stories and the reasons behind getting into the side hustle. For you, what I really appreciate about you is you seem to be someone who's very tactical, someone who's very logical, strategic. You seem to, you're probably a big planet person, I would imagine. So what are some of the skills, the routines, the talents, like if someone who's, I think about my mom, she's just turned 60. She retired from her, she worked for the city of LA for like 30 years. And now she's starting to think about, well, I might want to start an Airbnb. I might want to do that. She's starting to kind of have this kind of awakening. Are there skills that someone should develop, or are there things that someone should work on? Maybe they don't know what it is. Maybe they do know what it is, but like on a day-to-day basis, how can someone be working closer towards either making that leap to get started, or what are some things, like if they've already kind of got an idea, or like what should they be doing daily that's going to move them closer to this goal?
That's a good question. I love geeking out on this stuff, kind of like the daily habits, daily routines. I'll give you a glimpse of some of the stuff that I try and do daily, and maybe we can extrapolate out some examples from that. So when it comes to work-related stuff, I mean, probably the most important thing is this, itemizing out my top 3 priorities for tomorrow, the night before. So when I get up and I get to work, like I don't have this, 15-minute, 30-minute ramp up time of like, well, all right, guys, stretch it out, fire up the email, fire up Facebook, like, oh, what's going on today? It's like, no, this is, yesterday, Nick said, this is the most important thing. So, you need to at least tackle that before, diving into reactive mode, diving into somebody else's agenda. So that's been very helpful. One thing in the past couple years is a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole with the kids, like trying to get up before them. Like they keep shifting it earlier and earlier, but it's like, guys, this is supposed to be my time. What are you doing? Go back to bed. But trying to do a quick, 15, 20-minute workout first thing in the morning, like it kind of sucks in the moment, but like I feel so much better the rest of the day having done it, just mentally, physically. there's a couple things that I try and make a routine habit of. And then one that I've kind of gone in fits and starts with and try and be more consistent with, especially during pandemic time, is just a gratitude journal, where it's like, it's, there's a million and one ways to get it done. There's a bunch of apps that'll do it. I just have a physical notebook, like, what were you grateful for today? And it's just like, take a breath, like, the world seems to be crumbling around you, but like, let's take a moment. It could be worse. It could always be worse. So, that kind of stuff has been helpful for me. And you hear from guests on the Side Hustle show as well, like, the most important habit is persistence or consistency, and just kind of this daily 1% improvement type of attitude, where it's like going to the gym. It's like, I could go today or not go today, and there's going to be zero perceptible difference in body composition. I'm not going to lose any meaningful weight. I'm not going to, be crazy ripped. So it's easy to not go. But if you don't go consistently, you kind of know where that leads. And on the opposite side, like, if you do it consistently, you kind of, these 1% gains start to stack up, start to compound. So that's something that I hear over and over again, this like consistent effort, trying to get 1% better every day. But curious, I don't know, what have you seen from in your world, in your community?
Well, what's interesting is Amber Miller, she's one of our certified guides. So she's trained in the One Life curriculum and is one of our the word zealot has a negative connotation, but there are fighters out there bringing this stuff to the communities. And she said whack-a-mole is spot on. And I think that one big thing people have to, when they're getting into this space, is realize that, since kindergarten, since school, right, their schedule was laid out for them. They had people told them when to go in, people told them when to go home, when to eat, when to leave, right? And it was even that whole asking I thought about, like, kids these days, they have a real aversion to asking to go to the bathroom, right? That used to be like the standard. And I feel like asking for a day off is like the adult version of asking to go to the bathroom, right? And so there's this sovereignty that people want, but I think that there is a responsibility that comes with that as well, because so many people, when they want to start side hustles, I know when I was in that early phase, it was like, I don't have the time, and I was running a full brick and mortar business from 8 a.m. to sometimes 7 or 8, 9 p.m. at night. And so I'd have to wake up at 4 a.m. to work before I left at 6, and I'd have to stay up late. And so that I find that those stories of making it happen around your current circumstances are big, and kind of, taking control. Recently, I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. And similarly, they used to get up at 6:30, so I'd get up at 5:40, 5:30, and then they realized that I got up at 5:30, so they'd start getting up at 5:30.
Yeah, I don't know. They like hear me,
right?
like tiptoeing down the stairs.
Yeah.
I know.
And so it's like that control part, right? Not being helpless to your situation or your circumstances is I think a big theme that people, everybody has that story of kind of taking back control of their schedule one way or another, and I think that allows. Otherwise, you could just be, watching Netflix all day, working on your side hustle, and nothing gets done.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. This, like, exercising some semblance of control, even if it's like in tiny chunks, right? Because I think we all, maybe the dream is like, I want to be in full control of my calendar 24 hours a day. It's a spectrum. Like, that may not be realistic even for the most successful people. Like, there's always going to be responsibilities and other people's like requests and demands on your time. But even if and I've had days and weeks where it felt like I did not have a moment to breathe to myself, but the moments are probably there if I'm being honest with myself and saying, like, look, I prioritized something else, whatever. So the framework that actually somebody shared this with me, and it was like, you probably have most control over he called them the bookends of your days. First thing in the morning, last thing before bed. You mentioned, hey, 4 a.m, if that's what it takes, last thing before bed. If you can carve out 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour on either end, or even on just one of those, the impact on your mental, like you said, your fulfillment, this like, hey, I did something for myself today. I am moving forward on some project that I care about. It's so much more powerful than just like taking the punches as they come. It's like, oh, I was able to dish one back today.
Yeah, it really is. People it's a responsibility, right? It's like that gift and the curse. So I think people need to honor it the right way, right? If you want to have all of this luxury of time, there is some work that consequently that goes right along with it. So I'm gonna give you. I'd love to hear just some. We're big fans of random weird side hustles, right? Like I love the dog poop example. So I'd love for you to kind of get your brain set on maybe another one or two ways that people have creatively gone after these side hustles. But just before we do that, I'd love to take a moment to talk about what you're excited about with regards to the side hustle world, the entrepreneurial world. Like I said, the world's been kind of turned upside down. And so where do you see this kind of side hustle phenomenon? Where do you see it going, and where do you see the people who are involved in it? What do you see for them over the next months, years, time, amount of time?
I think a lot of people are kind of realizing and maybe you missed this message from the Great Recession, but it's like you gotta have to be in control of your own financial destiny, whether that is through upskilling your professional career, or starting something on the side that you have a little bit more ownership, more control over. So I think that was the big takeaway for a lot of the millennial generation, or kind of like graduating into the Great Recession, was like, and even older generations that lost their jobs, like there's no such thing as job security. I got to be looking out for myself. I got to figure out how to cut my own paycheck in a way. And it's an incredibly valuable and undertaught skill of, like we talked about, like we're trained to be employees, and the world, we'll still need employees, of course, but it's also going to need creative, independent thinkers who can solve problems and figure this stuff out, and how to create their own livelihood in a way. So that's maybe one of the big picture takeaways that I've kind of come away from spending some time in this space. But I do want to share some other side hustle stories if you have time. One of the one of the ones from the archives that is most impressive and inspiring to me is Matt Bocknock, who was an engineer, I think mechanical engineer in Chicago, but his side hustle, nights and weekends, was repairing motorcycles in his garage, like straight up service-based business, hours for dollars. Don't pay dealership rates. Like, take it to me. I know what I'm doing. I'll fix your bike. What Matt did that was really cool was, and he wasn't getting paid to do this, but he set up a little camera in the corner, filmed himself doing the repairs, and now he had content to put up on YouTube. He had, and it was completely speculative. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to make anything from this, but I'm going to put this up on YouTube. He started selling like full engine rebuild videos. Like, here's how I did this step by step by step. If you have this bike with this problem, I forget what he charged, 15, 20, 30 bucks. Here's the step-by-step guide. You can do it yourself. You don't have to pay somebody $800 to do this. Over the course of several years, like that, quote, passive or time leveraged piece of his business, from the YouTube ads, from the digital product sales, the, affiliate income from some of the YouTube stuff, like that took up a huge chunk of the pie, to the extent now it's like, well, if people stop bringing you bikes to repair, like, doesn't the content dry up? And he's like, oh no, if I'll just research, what bikes have I'll go buy a project bike, so I have something to film. I was like, this is fascinating. So what started as straight up hours for dollars has turned into this, much, much more time leveraged enterprise. And it also had grown during that time. He was around $1,000 a month when we first caught up, and a couple of years later, it was like $5 or $6 a month, and it was almost all, he wasn't getting paid to turn wrenches anymore. So I was really inspired by that story, and the lesson for me there was like, okay, once I have a source of income, once I have a little bit of financial breathing room, and I have my emergency fund in place, like, can I carve out a portion of my day to invest in these, like, these time leveraged opportunities, quote, passive income opportunities? Because, like, Warren Buffett puts it this way, he's like, look, if you don't find a way to make money in your sleep, you're going to work until you die. And it hits you. And it's like, well, eventually we all want to retire or stop working, or at least stop having to work. And I think, the the proactive investment of a sliver of your time to grow that sliver of your income pie that's passive is a really important exercise. But let me, we'll chew on that. Let me see if I can find some other ones from the archives that might be worth highlighting here.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating, that idea of, finding, right? I think the guy who was working on the bikes, he worked the fulfillment triangle perfectly. He saw, he was good at fixing bikes. He's obviously passionate enough to be able to do it, in his garage, and he thought that there was an opportunity there. And then, like you said, he didn't stop there, right? He continued to evolve and continued to build onto it, and find ways that he can remove himself from the business, so that way now his time is not, he's not just trading time exactly for dollars. And
yeah. I had another service-based business where it was the cleaning company. Actually, the guy started it while he was still in college, and his light bulb moment was, scrolling through the Yelp reviews for these cleaning services, and he's like, no one complained about the cleaning. They said stuff like, I couldn't get a quote. This company didn't call me back. I didn't know when they were going to show up. And he was like, I could hire professional cleaners, people who've been doing this for years and years. Like, I don't need to do that part of this business, but I could be a better administrator. I could be a better operator. Like, he was confident, like, I could do the marketing and the administrative piece. And this played matchmaker, essentially. Like, I will hire these crews to go out and do the work. Within a couple of years, he had built this thing to like 60 grand a month revenue wise, and was just taking his kind of management portion off the top and passing the rest along to these cleaning crews that were doing the work. It was like, this is crazy. It's not necessarily about, he didn't have to be a good cleaner. He just kind of had to put these pieces together. And there were some growing pains and headaches along the way, of course. But that was a inspiring one on the service-based side, where it doesn't, because like my advice is always like, well, what are you good at? What skills do you have? Like, could people pay you to do graphic design, web design, lawn mowing, whatever it is? It's like, it doesn't even have to be that case. Like, if you just want to play the matchmaker model. And then I'll share a recent example. Is actually a friend of ours locally who is like a custom cookie baker, which is something that, that was her stress relief when the kids were really young. Like, okay, I'm gonna go bake. And then she kind of developed a reputation amongst other moms in town for really cool cookie designs. And today she charges like $50 and up per dozen cookies, which I had to go look up, like, well, what's a dozen cookies cost? I found Amazon, Oreos on Amazon for like 75 cents a dozen. So by being customized, like by not trying to commoditize this, by, creating really cool creative designs, like she's like, charging 70 times more than, the name brands, and is able to command those prices. So I thought her story, and primarily through Instagram, like no website, no shipping, no nothing, just kind of like a local product marketed through Instagram. Just done really well with that.
Yeah, I love that. In my dad started a business, and unfortunately, I love him to death. He failed miserably though, and I don't blame him though, because he didn't have the education, he didn't have the resources, he didn't have Google, and also the startup costs that were required to start a business. He had to take out a loan for, I don't know. I don't even know I know it was a big loan though, and I know it was something that he was never really able to recover from. Whereas you said, I was talking with someone who we work with. They found some scrap leather, started an Instagram page, and started selling leather earrings. Like it was that quick. There was no, like you said, there's no startup, there's no website, there's no anything. They found some literally trash, cut it up into something that someone would like, and then people get money for it. And so it can be that easy. It doesn't have to be, you're starting this, large operation. And for you, I was actually, we were talking about it a little bit, but you have a list of 99, I think there's even more than 99. I think you added on to it. It looks like now there's over 100 ideas, side hustle ideas, that people can get. And so it's sidehustlenation.com/ideas, and it walks through a lot of them. I mean, this is huge. So if you guys are looking for different options or different routes and paths, and you guys want to kind of look at what's out there, this is very comprehensive. So it's sidehustlenation.com/ideas. You guys can get that. It's a free list. There's no opt-in, there's no anything. It's very generous. And And then Nick, you also have a podcast, Side Hustle Nation. Is there anywhere else that people can kind of stay connected and stay just in tune with what you're doing and what you're up to?
Those are absolutely the best places to go and check out. Appreciate the plug there. It is it hopefully just gets the creative juices flowing, and you can kind of dive into whichever of these opportunities or models that you're most interested in. A lot of them will kind of link to different podcast episodes, so you can hear from somebody who's been there, done that. And if that sounds appealing to you, I encourage you to take the next step and put yourself out there, take action, because learning is one thing. Like I'm a lifelong student, of course, but the best education comes from taking action and seeing what kind of response you can get.
Yeah, I'd encourage you guys to go, and if you're in a part of your life or your journey where this is on your mind and you're looking for it, I would encourage you to go and listen to Nick's podcast, because hearing some of the stories, even if you're not going to go pick up poop, even if you're not going to fix motorcycles, that may spark an idea, that may give you an inspiration of what you could do. You may find a way that you could match your own talents in a similar way. And so I'd really encourage you guys to go and hear those stories from people who are out there making it happen, because you can see that there is such a wide range of options and a wide range of paths that you can take in this world. So the website is Side Hustle Nation, sidehustlenation.com. The podcast is also Side Hustle Nation, and then the link for all those ideas is sidehustlenation.com/ideas. We'll try and link all those up in all the places that these are posted. But as we wrap up and get out of here, Nick, any last or final thoughts or anything that hasn't been said today that you feel should be said?
Sure. The biggest thing is to just consider your side hustle as an experiment. And it could not even just be side hustle, like any kind of change or tweak you're trying to make in your life, like position it as an experiment. Like, I'm going to test this out. If it works, if it doesn't, I'm going to learn something either way. And that seems to be what has separated the folks who've had success from the folks who kind of are stuck on the sidelines, this willingness to experiment, not knowing the outcome.
Yeah, you've got to try. You definitely got to try, and chances are the first one may or may not work, but chances are you're gonna have to try a few things before you find one that sticks. So thank you guys so much for being here with us. We want to hear your guys' stories. So if you guys, wherever you're at in your journey, whether you're starting out and just trying to find your idea, or if you're in the middle of your idea and now you're trying to actually make it take hold or turn it into your main source of income, we'd love to hear your story. Leave us a comment here on the video or post in the One Life Roadback community on Facebook, and let us know how what you're doing and how One Life can support you. Nick, I have to say thank you for you, man. I know with kids and businesses, time is of the essence. So I have to thank you for all the time.
Do you hear him screaming downstairs?
No, we didn't pick it up at all. So you're all good. Mine are in the other room as well. I had to do a change of location because we took over. So the rest of you guys, I hope you guys are enjoying your Tuesday. We are here every Tuesday live on Facebook, and then you guys can catch our podcast everywhere podcasts are found: iTunes, Spotify, all those places, Mondays and Fridays. If you guys have any questions, leave them down below, and we'll come back and try and answer them later. See you guys.